Today I have Yele with me. He is one of our Sync Pro members, the pro reviewers on the Pro Feedback platform. And Yele comes to us as a orchestral trailer producer and composer. And he actually just got back literally from having some of his music orchestrated and actually performed by a live orchestra. So he's extremely exhausted. He says he's been up for basically 3 days straight, but he's still making time to join us today and review one of our tracks from our members. So this is dedication, guys. This is what you get with Pro Feedback. We have guys that really do care about your music, and they really want to make sure that you're getting high quality stuff, even if they haven't slept in 3 days. So Yele, we're really glad to have you here, man. This is a track from Victor. Victor, I'm so sorry. I will not even try to pronounce your last name because I will completely butcher it and embarrass myself and probably you. So we're just going to call this Epic Trailer because that's the track that title that we have here. But this is basically a trailer track that he has submitted to us, and he wants to know basically, is it licensable? Can this get placed? Is it good enough? What kinds of placements maybe could this kind of a track get? So we're going to try to dive into all of those subjects after we take a listen to the track. So here we go. All right, Victor, amazing work, man. Very epic, huge. Whoops, we're not gonna play the next track. There we go. Amazing work here. I really like the intensity of it. And I think the one thing, we'll definitely dive into some of the issues I think we can try to help you improve upon. But I think for me, the biggest thing I'm loving about this is building. You really do add nice new elements as we move along the track. And I never felt like I was sort of stuck somewhere in your track. So I think you've got that sort of idea of building basically one big crescendo throughout your track. So excellent work on just sort of like building up your track. But let's go ahead and dive into the details here. Yele, why don't you start us off with maybe some of the things you really liked about this track, and then we'll kind of dive into the things that can be improved.
Yeah, I really like the, like you said, the structure-wise, it's an perfectly extreme example of how a trailer track should be structured. So if your intro, you have your build up, and then you have your big climax, and then you have a small outro, a little epilogue, and that's how all trailer tracks right now today are being built or being made. And he really nails that part on this track. And the other thing that I really like as well, when you have the final climax when in this track, he uses compression a lot, but not on a fatigue kind of way. So it's a lot of compression that he's using, but it's adding a creative effect on the entire track itself. So he did a really great job on that one as well. So yeah, it's a very great track. Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the things that maybe he can improve upon. Let's start with sort of the overall in terms of the like emotion and mood. Anything stand up for you that, or out to you, that could maybe be improved in terms of that focus that he has?
Yeah, I mean, in the intro, he is using a string patch or string VST. I think he can play a little bit around with the dynamics a little bit more. So you get this kind of a wave kind of figure throughout the string section, because right now it's sounding a little bit stiff, like it doesn't really move around in the dynamics overall. So he can improve upon that by just playing a little bit with the expression or the modulation wheel of his keyboards, and basically bring life to this string arrangement that he created. Because right now it sounds like a VST, and with these kind of trailer tracks, you want to mimic as close as a real string ensemble as possible to be able to get big paying clients, for example. So he can improve upon that. And then at the very end, I noticed that when the final climax was done and he went over to the epilogue, it was very, very abrupt. So he didn't have any big boom at the end or a big impact, which could make the transition from the climax to the epilogue a bit more interesting. So this were the main issues that I found with this track. And maybe he could also use a little bit of reverb on the entire mix as well, because it sounds a little bit dry, not too much, but just a little bit of a reverb would already make this track sound more bigger as well. And one final thing that I had in the major or in the climax part as well, the chorus, the vocals could stand out a little bit more with, so you just bring them up a little bit in volume, and I think then this track is, very good potential to being licensed for a trailer or for a production company as well. Yeah.
Okay. So my question for you is, because I think you're more glued into the orchestral trailer world, did it feel like, I got a sense, and I could be wrong on this, that when we transitioned from the earlier section to the sort of final section, that it was a big jump up, and it almost felt like we were in this almost brand new intensity that almost felt more conflicted, more aggressive than the beginning. Yeah. So I felt like and then maybe that does work well for some trailer tracks. I don't know if you can comment on that. To me, it felt like there might have been too much of a jump from this kind of softer building to this massive, just like battlefront thing. But maybe I'm wrong on that. What do you think?
I mean, it's a track of around 2.11 minutes. So a normal standard trailer track would be around 2:30. So he can indeed increase the length a little bit between the mid sides or the less epic part. Yeah, that one. And then he can play a little bit around with that. But for example, a short trailer cue for a TV spot, for example, this could potentially work as well. So and this is the case with most trailer houses. They require you a full mix of around 2 or 2:30 minutes, and then trimmed down versions of around 1 minute, 30 seconds, and as well 15 seconds as well. So it just depends on what the client wants. I think that he can get away with it right now. But if he wants to increase his potential to being licensed, then I would suggest make it a little bit longer, around 2:30, and then indeed in the midsection to the epic part, make it a little bit longer and make the transition not that abrupt, like you said. So yeah, I agree with that as well.
Okay, great. And yeah, because one thing I wanted to point out to Victor, I'm going to move my camera so you guys, well, actually you can't see it. I can't move it. Doesn't matter. But the track is only called Epic Trailer. Now, that's probably a working title. I understand that. But we need to also get in a habit when we're composing music to not just think epic trailer or not just rock track or not just hip hop track. We really need to focus on the emotion, the mood, the scene. Where is this track going to land? So that's one thing, Victor, I want you to hopefully take away from this review is to, before you start a track, really visualize, or as you're composing it, wherever this process comes for you, really visualize the type of scene or image or project, film, whatever the thing you're going to be composing for, what actually is the emotion that you want to convey, because that's where I'm a little bit concerned for the focus of this track, because in the beginning it feels like it could be for one type of a show, and that ending is like battle cry, huge epic drums kind of a thing. So I feel like we're in a couple of different places. That doesn't mean that you want to, I mean, you still want to have the dynamics of nice and small building up to something big and epic, but definitely the focus needs to be clear, and I think you want to keep that clear focus throughout the track. And so when you only have a title like Epic Trailer, I'm wondering how much of that focus was there from the beginning. So it's just one of those wise habits to get into. Like, always think about the scene, the emotion, the tone of what you're going for, and not about the genre. Like, not worrying about, is this a trailer track? Yeah, of course you're going to be using orchestral elements, big drums. It is a trailer track. You don't got to worry about that. But you got to be thinking more, dive into the details a little bit on, okay, is this a scene of somebody launching off into outer space? Is this a scene of somebody fighting for their rights, or is this a scene of somebody breaking up, or a tragedy, or something like that, right? So really be thinking about visually and emotionally where this stuff lands. That's certainly what I can say. Now let's talk a little bit about the mix and master. You mentioned a little bit about the compression on the last course. I'd agree. It was definitely intense. I think in some ways that could be useful. It kind of depends on the library, probably. I bet some libraries they think that's great. Some will say, tone down a little bit on that, because there was a lot of boominess, at least I was hearing on my end, but that can work for sure. What else in terms of, is there anything he can improve upon that, or do you feel like that was pretty much a solid mix and master?
I think it already sounds really solid as a mix, and the mastering, well, most trailer houses or production music houses have an in-house mastering guy. So, but I want to add what you said previously. That's with the naming part. So right now he calls it Epic Trailer. But when you work for a production music label or you work for a trailer house, they most of the time will give you a brief with the keywords that they're searching for, like ambient or epic or uplifting, and that makes it already easier to go into that genre that you're given to compose, and then the naming part will eventually come automatically. So this is also something I wanted to add to that previous thing that you mentioned. But regarding the mix and the master, I think it sounds already great. Like I said, a little bit more reverb, maybe tone a little bit down on the compression, but I personally like over-compressed trailer music. But that's just a matter of taste. But the only thing I can say right now, a little bit reverb, and then the vocal part, the choir, can go a little bit up. That's the only thing that I have right now for the mix.
Awesome. Yeah, and I remember from the beginning you said, the strings feeling a little bit flat. I agree, and it's one of the most common points of feedback that I give a lot of the members is, and I put out a tutorial about it recently, actually, I think I released it on my YouTube channel, is because so many producers want to throw strings or horns or something into their track, even if it's not orchestral music, even if they're just trying to do something with rock music and they want some strings on top. But they literally, and I am guilty of this, is, you have a heavy hand, you play your string parts, and then you're done. And then you just walk away and say, well, I got strings on my track, so therefore it's now hybrid. Well, that's step one, is getting strings that sound decent onto your track. Step two, and it's a necessary, required step, is what Yele said, is you've got to modulate them. You've got to automate them. Whatever process works for you, they need to have a live dynamic to them. So I will link that tutorial in the description box of this video. So if you guys did not watch that, and we're not talking about hours and hours of extra work. I'm literally talking about maybe 15, 20 minutes of extra work to just go back through your strings and make sure that there's a live feeling to them. Yele just had some of his music recorded with a live orchestra, so he's got fresh ears on exactly what that means and how different it sounds to have real players play your music rather than a VST. But VSTs are very powerful these days. You can fool a lot of people into believing that you actually had a live orchestra performing, at least most people, maybe not all musicians and producers, but the average Joe watching a TV show does not know whether or not those strings were recorded live or they just sound like great strings to them. So definitely just make sure everybody who's watching this get in the habit of automating and modulating your strings and horns. Anything that has that sort of dynamic to them, make sure you do that. So, well, awesome.
Yeah,
Yele, I think you got some great stuff.
Also, sorry, and like you said, it doesn't have to be a lot of extra work with modulation, because how I program my strings, it basically is I record it on my keyboard and I automatically plays already with the modulation and the expression on my MIDI controller, and it basically allows me to come up with ideas quickly. And with the programming of strings, what I do is I program every section of the string ensemble separately. So it gives me more control in the mix overall, but it also allows me to play with one hand and with the other hand control the modulation and expression, which basically doesn't give me a lot of extra time to work on. Maybe I need to re-record some stuff because I didn't play something correctly, but it doesn't have to take very long to have something sounding lively and realistic, especially with the string libraries and VSTs that you have today, basically. So yeah.
That's a great point. And that is a skill to be able to perform, make sure you get the right notes, and then also at the same time use a modulation wheel. So it's almost like becoming it's like a new musical instrument essentially that you're having to play. So, in the beginning that might be really tough and difficult. And for me, that's right now even sound like probably impossible unless it's a really simple string melody. But for me, even just recording it flat, going back and then now recording the modulation wheel to it or doing my volume automation, however I'm going to do it. Either way, we're talking about minutes, not hours, and certainly not days extra worth of work. So it's these little 5 to 10% extra bits of effort that will take your track to that next level. So awesome. Yella, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
No, I think he's on the right track with this epic trailer score, and if he would implement the feedback that we have today, or that we have mentioned in this video, I really think that he can get this track licensed by a production music library or even a trailer house. So I really think he's on the right track.
I would agree too. Victor, you are doing great. And as with a lot of our reviews, all we're doing is telling you, man, to just course correct for about 10-20%. And this is a point that I made in another review I did with one of the pros, is that these tiny little things we're pointing out, for many of you it might sound like it's not really a big deal. What difference is that really going to make? Well, today for sure making tiny little adjustments doesn't seem like it's a big deal between what you have and what could be once you make these little adjustments. But fast forward 5 years, 10 years in the future, where you're constantly making these tiny little adjustments and improving your tracks steadily, you're going to be miles apart from where you were. A 10-degree difference in your trajectory after a while is going to take you very far away from where you would have been. And this is a mistake that I made earlier on in my career because I didn't have a service like Pro Feedback. So I was just constantly, doing decent work. I wouldn't call it excellent work, but I was doing decent work. But I wasn't taking the time. I didn't have the resource to get feedback like this, and I wasn't making these little 10-20% changes in my approach till a few years into my career. And that's what took me so long to finally get the ball rolling and start seeing some great success and work with better companies and all that good stuff. So I'm trying to give you guys this service, and Yele is one of the other members trying to give you this service, so that you don't have to spend 3 years, 5 years battling this stuff out and hoping that what you're doing is getting better. You can get certainty on whether or not your tracks are getting better, because you can post tracks like this for us to review, and then you can log in the next month and post the same track for another review from the same pro if you want, or go to a different pro, or you can send it to me for either one of my live reviews I do every single month or one of these reviews that I post on YouTube. So you have many opportunities to get clarity and certainty on your sync licensing career. So on behalf of myself and Yele and all the other pros, we encourage you and would invite you to consider joining us in Pro Feedback. The link is in the description box below, so definitely check that out. So thank you so much, Yele. We're going to let you go take a big, long nap now to catch up on your sleep. We appreciate your time today, bud.
Thank you.